Welcome back to the garden. I'm just pricking out some Aquilegia seeds. Aquilegia is one of my favourite spring perennials, but it does have a tendency to cross-pollinate. So in order to make sure that I have some true varieties that I know I can rely on for the colour choices that I want for floristry, I have to sow some every year. So I've got some really pretty pale blue ones, some of my absolute favourite giant white ones, which have those amazing winged backs to them. And these are going to be brought on outside for the next 6 weeks or so, and I'll be planting them out in the cutting garden at around the end of September, where they'll overwinter quite happily despite any cold weather that we might get. I was hoping to also be pricking out my foxgloves. However, the squirrels had other ideas. So my trays of seedlings that I was bringing on with lots of beautiful varieties of foxgloves, the squirrels got into and they dug them all up, and all of the soil turned over and it's killed all of the foxglove seedlings. So it's now a little bit late to start thinking about sowing foxgloves, so I don't think I'm going to have any foxgloves next year unless they decide to self-seed. I haven't actually cut back the foxgloves from this year, so it's a possibility I'll get some self-seeders in the cutting garden, which I'm kind of hoping happens. But this is what happens when you work with nature. I could well have covered them over with some sort of netting to prevent the squirrels from getting on there. But in all honesty, I didn't actually think that squirrels on a shelving unit was going to be an issue. I was more concerned about rabbits. But yeah, the squirrels have completely destroyed the foxgloves, which is a real shame. But I live and learn, and next year when I sow my foxgloves, I will protect them a little bit better. That's all the Aquilegia pricked out. So I'd like to take you on a little tour in the cutting garden and show you what has really survived this hot weather and what has not fared so well. And then share with you some of the plans that I have for next year and how I intend to try and work with potential drought conditions. So let's go and take a look. So as you can see, the dahlias have really loved this warm weather. So drought was declared a couple of weeks ago here in Cornwall, and last week we started a hosepipe ban, which means I can no longer water these dahlias. Nothing in the cut flower garden has actually been watered at all this summer throughout the really hot weather, but the dahlias have been watered about once a week. Dahlias are not drought tolerant, which means they really do need to have a good drink at least once a week in order to get those really thick stems that they have fully hydrated and put in some significant growth. But they haven't had any competition from the slugs and snails this year, which means they are much happier, and they've had this lovely warmth which has helped them create really lovely strong plants. Within the cut flower garden, I've got three sorts of dahlias. We've got dahlias that are grown from tuber, which were left in the ground, and these have been overwintering. Because we've got a lovely hillside garden here, we don't have any water sitting, so the tubers don't rot out. We also have tubers grown from rooted cuttings, so the cuttings were taken from mother plants in February and brought on in the polytunnel and planted out in May. And we also have dahlias that are grown from seed. And the dahlias that were grown from seed come in a real variety of colours, and you can't predict what sort of colours you're going to get, which is part of the fun of it. But they're a much more open flower, and the bees absolutely love the seed-grown dahlias. So they are here for us to pick, but actually I love seeing the bees really enjoying them within the cutting garden. The roses have just started having their second flush. I've worked these flowers really hard for the last couple of months. So they've had a little bit of a rest through July and they're just starting to put on another flush of flowers now. They are going over much quicker with the heat, but with constant deadheading, they are actually doing really, really well. And they've put on quite a significant amount of growth with their second flush. So I'm actually quite happy with the way that the roses have performed through these drought-like conditions. So my sweet peas were hit really badly with 50-mile-an-hour winds that came from the east, which we're not protected from. And they've been in a big heat for about a month. So they've not had any of the seed pods removed, which stop it flowering. But actually the perennial sweet pea is still flowering, despite having no water on it, sitting in a huge heap and not having those seed pods removed, which is a really positive sign that actually the perennial sweet pea is a really, really resilient pea. Other things that have done well that I would expect to do really well, things like the achillea. So the achillea has done really great. These yellow flowers have just flowered for months and have held their colour and shape. They haven't been turning brown. Really, really great way of bringing some colour into the garden. They might be a little bit strong for a cut flower garden, but actually I'm really pleased just to have something that's blooming at this time of year, despite this incredible heat that we've had. The Rebecca has been absolutely wonderful. It has flowered and flowered and flowered so far, and it's just going to keep on going. I absolutely love it. Ironically, I haven't had many weddings this year who want these colours. These are much more autumnal colours, and normally my Rebecca looks at its absolute best from around now until late September. But these have been flowering like this for quite a few weeks already, and my summer weddings haven't yet wanted these really strong autumnal colours. But I'm going to continue cutting them and deadheading them, and they should still keep producing flower stems for me. But the Rebecca has definitely been one of those flowers that has absolutely loved this heat. I haven't watered it at all. It's been completely drought tolerant. So as I come up into my herb beds, I've got mint, which has just started flowering. This mint really needs taking in hand this year. So it was planted into the ground in pots just to try and avoid the runners, but it has escaped the pots and is popping up in different places. So I really need to try and manage this quite wild mint patch through this autumn and winter. The other things that are just starting to look fabulous in these beds is this one here, which is a flower called Pearly Everlasting, and it has a straw flower like flower, but loads of them. So it's kind of daisy-like in bloom. Really, really useful filler flower. So we've got sedum here, which is really, really drought tolerant, and it's currently green and it's just starting to take on the crimson tinge, and it's going to become fully crimson, and this will be absolutely covered in bees. It's already just starting to attract the bees now that the flowers are thinking about opening up. And this is a really great filler, and it's extremely drought tolerant. We've got it in a couple of other colours as well, including this really lovely aubergine colour, which again is a really great filler if you're looking for those sort of darker plum-like tones. It works really well with the orchid plant, which is this Mediterranean, it's like spinach, and it is fully edible, so you can eat the leaves, and these seed pods are just looking fabulous, and it's been incredibly popular with our pick your own customers. It looks really, really lovely in a floral arrangement, and it also dries really well. A really similar plant is this amaranthus. We've got two different colour choices here. We've got this really deep burgundy, and we've also got this lovely orangey one, which is called Hot Biscuits, and it's really fun. It's quite an unusual plant to work with within a floristry arrangement. It works really well in tall vases. Again, it's fully edible, and you can eat the leaves and you can harvest the flowers, which are grains. And these have been, again, really, really drought tolerant. The cosmos has started to run out of steam already. So I have been deadheading and deadheading and deadheading, but it's not enough, and the plants are starting to dry out and finish up. So I've cut this beautiful, beautiful row of plants quite heavily over the last few weeks, but I really don't know how much longer it's going to go on for. We've got some new lush foliage coming through at this end with some of the Cosmos Purity plants, which have been flowering really well, but it's having a real nice burst of energy. But at this end, the Cosmos Apricotta and the Cranberry is starting to look a little bit sorry for itself, and I'm really not sure how much longer I can keep nurturing it through this dry weather. Verbena has done incredibly well, as I would expect it to do. This is all self-sown, and I have to pull out a lot of the verbena throughout the year because it becomes really quite invasive. The butterflies love it, the bees love it. I'm not a huge fan of it, but again, it's really popular with our pick your own customers, and it gives us a really lovely deep purple, which I don't get anywhere else within the cutting garden at this time of year. Echinops is starting to finish, but the bees are still thrilled with it. Some of the lower, newer stems are still usable, but anything that goes quite fuzzy and fluffy, that's well pollinated, and it's not going to last very well in a vase. And it doesn't look very pretty either because it goes brown really, really quickly. So the Echinops is finished quite a bit earlier than it normally would be, just because of the sheer volume of sunshine we've had. So this rather boring looking bed has actually given me a huge amount of inspiration for next year and how I'm going to try and battle through potential drought conditions. So this bed was full of stocks this spring. They were sown in autumn and planted out in April. And just as they were starting to finish with the May heatwave, the plants that had been growing in here the previous year, which was borage and cineglossum, they had liberally self-seeded, as they tend to do. And those plants started to germinate and come up through the finishing stocks. And they've given me a lovely crop of borage and cineglossum, two precious blue flowers, all the way through June and July. So because of that, I'm going to take inspiration, and when I'm planting out next year's crops into these beds, I'm going to also do some drill sowing of various different hardy annuals, with the hope that if we have really good conditions, they're going to germinate and give me a lovely late crop through these beds. Now, there's every chance that this won't work. If we have a really wet spring and it's particularly cold, then the seed may not germinate, or slugs and snails may come along and eat all of the seedlings. However, if we do have a really dry spring, then they should germinate and everything should leave them alone, and it will give a later crop, just like it's done this year in this bed. I'm going to try and emulate it through most of the beds where I'm planting out annuals. It's just going to be worth giving something else a bit of an extra try. But flowers isn't the only story. A lot of floristry is also about foliage, and the eucalyptus has been doing really well. So it's looking really beautiful. These were all pollarded back in March. So I cut them down to around the height of my waist, and this is all the lovely, beautiful regrowth. And this will start to be harvested from October because it's just all lovely and fresh at the moment. It's really soft, and if I was to cut it, it would just wilt. But it smells incredible, and these hot days have really brought out the scent of the eucalyptus. We grow a few different varieties here. This is Eucalyptus gunnii, which has a slightly darker bluey coloured leaf. And then we've got Eucalyptus cinerea, baby blue, which has got this fabulous gummy, wonderfully scented leaf, and it's much more silvery in colour. You can see the different shapes of the leaves of these two different varieties, both of which are equally useful, but it's lovely to have these different textures and colours within the same variety of plant. But there's two varieties of foliage that have done incredibly well this year. So this is ninebark, which, as you can see, has grown to be an enormous height. It's got these incredible dark leaves. It's very gothic, but I absolutely love it. But my broom has put on at least double the amount of height in the last 4 or 5 months. So this was covered in the spring in beautiful flowers. We grow Alba, which is the white variety, and we grow another which has got this sort of raspberry pink flower, and it flowered for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it looked like a patch of strawberry milkshake. It was absolutely beautiful. But they were half the size of the size that they are now. So these are a Mediterranean plant. They're very resistant to wind and drought. So it doesn't surprise me that these have been doing so well. Absolutely enormous now, which is very exciting for next year when these have lots of flowers. I will have to do some pruning of them to make sure that the flower quality and the stem quality is as good going forward as it was this year. But I'm just so impressed with the amount of growth that this has put on. And finally, grasses. I think that so many cut flower growers are going to start growing a lot more grasses in this country because it again has been so much more tolerant to drought. But I absolutely wouldn't be without them. They have added something really special to a lot of my summer arrangements this year. And I'm really enjoying some of the height that they can also give. One of my favourite grasses to grow in the cutting garden has been miscanthus. It creates this incredible hedge. I would never have thought of using miscanthus as a hedge, but it works brilliantly. So this was hard cut back in February, and it was cut down to around knee height, and it's put on all this wonderful regrowth of grass, which is actually quite sharp. You have to be quite careful when you're handling it. But this sends up these beautiful big flower fronds from around now until the end of September, which turn feathery, and they catch the winter light, and I leave them there all winter and they look fantastic. So they're a really versatile thing. You can have them as a border or an edge for your cut flower garden to give you some wind protection, and you can also cut from it as well. So I absolutely love miscanthus. So what's done particularly well this year? Well, the perennials obviously have done brilliantly, and that's kind of what I would expect, to be honest. They have started flowering at about the same time as they would normally, and they are finishing around the same time as they normally finish too, despite the really hot weather and the drought-like conditions. So perennials are absolutely something that we need more of in the cut flower garden. Other things that have done well are anything with a daisy-like flower, so the straw flowers have done particularly well, and also any of the plants that rely on them going to seed. So the amaranthus and the orchid have done really well because they are plants that have effectively bolted in the hot weather and produced really good seed heads. So that's what I'm looking at growing more of in the future, because they have been really reliable and they're going to give me some great flower stems. I just need to make sure that I've got a good colour variety. Going forward, that's going to be probably my biggest challenge, is making sure that I've got flowers that are heat and drought tolerant, but also potentially rain tolerant if we have a really wet summer, but also giving me all of the colour varieties that I need throughout the growing season. So lots of food for thought, lots of homework to be done over the next couple of weeks to really plan out the garden for next growing season, to make sure that it's as sustainable and resistant to the weather as possible.